Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
Sorry about that. My first question this morning comes from Funsak Dorji in Dharamshala, India. Hi, panelists. My friend is a filmmaker. How can he make use of a Stream Deck in his workflow? He doesn't do live streams. Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
So, Stream Decks are one of the most useful sub-tools that I think any of us use. And the thing about them is they're incredibly programmable. So I would look for repetitive tasks. Ask your friend to make a list. Go through his regular editing day as a filmmaker. If he's going to use this for editing, he will eventually end up using it for more than editing. But one of the things he wants to do is indicate how many times does he have a sequence of actions that he has to repeat over and over again. Maybe he has to go to the beginning of his timeline and do something and continue for a particular period of time. If he has to do that over and over again, rather than having a keyboard combination on his actual computer keyboard, you can program one button to do those things, a sequence of actions. And that is just the smallest tip of the iceberg. The Stream Deck is really like a recipe machine that you can customize to take some of the difficulty out of your work. It also you've got multiple pages in these Stream Decks, which means that you can set up a page for operating a particular virtual device like tape transport. You can set up a different page for those edit commands. It really is a very universal time saver and workflow enhancer. One of the things I would highly suggest, get him on the Stream Deck website, on the Elgato's website, and look at their implementation of all the commands that are possible in the back end, because until you understand all of the things built in for not just the Stream Deck itself, but for all the devices that a Stream Deck can control, that just opens up your brain to the number of things it can do for you. And it is a huge productivity enhancer if you have a lot of repetitive tasks like that.
Yeah, if you look at sideshoweffects.com, so this is sideshoweffects.com, and you can see, oops, I hit the wrong button there. These are all the apps that are, so 3D, everything from 3D Studio Max to Ableton Live to DaVinci Capture One, Logic Pro, Unreal, Resolve. And what they do is they build, for Stream Decks, they build templates, and these are all pre-programmed templates that you can use for what you're doing. So this is the best place to look, at least to get for ideas. And I've got a bunch of their templates already. So sideshoweffects.com is going to really show you, I think, what's possible with the Stream Deck. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, the Sideshow effects, I love them, and I have a real problem installing them and updating them. It's a process, but once you get through that process, it is pretty impressive. I use Stream Decks mostly when I'm doing the intake. So, I use it to tag through footage, roll through it, and really quickly get a whole bunch of keywords in there because, Alt 1 through 9 is not usually enough. So I can use it to reload and preload a series of things when I'm tagging on the import. It's really handy.
Next question.
Next one comes from Wayne in Los Angeles. I have to live stream an event using 4 cameras. 2 are Blackmagic G2 micros. One is a Sony FX6 and a Red Komodo to use on the jib and the Steadicam because Blackmagic's autofocus is bad. What does the panel suggest I do in order to color match them all?
So I'd start with the thing that you're going to have probably the least control over is probably actually the Komodo, is my guess, is probably going to be the least control or the Sony. So you have a lot of control over the Blackmagic G2s because they are shadable from the switcher. Assuming you're using that switcher, you're going to have a lot of those. You're going to have a lot of the tools to kind of fine tune that. So the G2s, normally I would say the micros are the first thing that you do because they're the simplest camera. Usually what you're trying to do is take the camera that has the least amount of control, get it to where you want it, and then keep adding the cameras that have more and more control to them because that's going to be easier for you to mix them. Now, one thing to think about also is doing this all with LUTs. So basically you get one of the cameras, any of the camera, all of these cameras except LUTs. And so if you can take them into, you get a chart, a color chart. This can be an X-Rite chart or it can be a Demont chart. And basically you shoot an image, same lighting, same position, You really got to frame it up exactly the same way with each one of these cameras. Then you're going to take that into Resolve. You also want to shoot a person, because what you want to do is get the person to be looking exactly the way you want it, and that they look the way they want it. And then you shoot that, and for that first camera, you get the LUT to what you want. That first camera is your base camera, and then you're going to start adding charts to those cameras. And as you do that, you take one chart and put it over top of the base chart, set its layer transfer to difference, and you're going to see the difference between that camera and the other camera below it. Where it's white, it's very different. Where it's black, it's not different at all. And you can simply close the gap between those. Sometimes you might find it easier to look at one channel at a time, so make red look like red, blue look like blue, green look like green, and tighten that up using the LUTs. So you're using basically you're not using LUTs, but you're using the color management inside of Resolve. So you're using the nodes to basically drive that to a solution. Then you grab those nodes or grab that image and export a LUT. Now, what you should be able to do there is put those into those cameras, and as long as you don't change lenses or other things, those cameras are all going to look exactly the same. It is time consuming. It'll take you a day to do that. So it'll take a good colorist an hour to do that. It'll take an average person about a half a day to a day to get it done. But once they're done, you're not really you can use the tools that are built into the camera as fine adjustment for something that you didn't get to see. But you'll find that those cameras are pretty darn close after that. Go ahead, Jason.
Doug, DJP, Doug Johnson Production has this incredibly useful thing. First, Alex's way is the best way. But this, if you're kind of afraid of LUTs, is pretty handy. You go to lutmath.com. You basically start with the camera being corrected and then the camera that you're looking for. You put one LUT in and then set the intensity, and it will do the math and create a transformative LUT in an attempt to match the cameras. It is not perfect, but boy, is it a great start if you're brand new to this stuff.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. What have your initial impressions been of Apple Intelligence?
Go, Jason.
So far, I've been blown away. The summaries just kicked in immediately, and I was kind of surprised. I'm accustomed to getting a very long article that I need to kind of pay attention to and putting it into notes, just going into reader mode, copying the entire thing, and then getting into notes. Sometimes I'll just get my iPhone to read it. The summarization is markedly better even than the beta that I had used 2 weeks prior to that. So far, so good.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mariella Zushamera in We Below. What happened to the mics at the big reveal last week at the event in Houston with Queen Bey?
I don't know what happened to the mics. Did anyone see them? I think if you're going to ask a question like that, I think you really need to send us a link of what we're supposed to be looking for. I can guess what happened to the mics. Most likely it was a wireless breakdown or a Dante breakdown or an air gap breakdown or someone left the slider down. So those are the things I can guess without hearing it. Those are the four most common issues. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's usually with wireless handhelds. It's almost always the issue is somebody forgot to turn them on because they leave them turned off until the last minute to preserve the batteries, especially on a 4-hour-long event or a 2-hour-long event. So they're trying to conserve the batteries. So probably they just went out. The A2 didn't check the switches before the show started.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The local cable company can now send 10 gig to my address. I'm upgrading equipment accordingly. My question is on a firewall. What's the simplest firewall to use for a home context?
Go ahead, Jason.
I'll answer the question exactly as asked. The very simplest firewall would be an Eero. And Eeros, yes, are actually fast enough to do this if you get the very, very, very expensive ones. It is one click and you are done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you start talking about 10 gigs, I would really start to think about Cisco and Ubiquiti are the solution. Cisco, Ubiquiti, and as related to Cisco is Meraki. It just really depends on how much money you want to spend. So Ubiquiti is kind of on the least expensive. I mean, I don't think. I mean, we're using a Ubiquiti right now on one of our kits, and I was talking to Kevin about it last night. And he's like, "Well, it's not a Meraki." it's kind of like, it's okay. So these do get expensive as you start to go down this path. And so the one question is how are they handing it off to you? Are they handing it off as fiber? So do you need an SFP? Are they handing it off as as Ethernet? So find out what that looks like and ask us more questions about it. But I think that those are a Cisco and Cisco, a subset of Cisco is Meraki. They're owned by Cisco, or Ubiquiti are going to be probably the ones that that's most likely going to be what you're going to use. So it's just a matter of figuring out exactly how they're going to hand it off to you. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Thoughts on Apple's staggering announcements rather than all announcements in one event? Better message delivery?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of a shrewd move in the marketing departments in order to spread the headlines out across multiple days. That way, each day when they make that announcement in the morning, they'll dominate. They'll float to the top of the technical news on all the news servers out there because something new has been announced and they've kept it quiet until that day. So an Apple article at the top of the tech news today, an Apple article at the top of the tech news tomorrow, an Apple article at the top of the tech news the next day. When they release them all as one, I think they have a tendency for one new product to kind of get lost. If one product has been awaited longer than others, it might overshadow the others. And so all the attention will get placed on one product of three that are introduced in a single video that's dropped, if they're doing it like this rather than having an event where everyone attends. I think it's a good idea to spread it out across 3 days because they extend their coverage and they show up at the top of the news, like you said, 3 days in a row instead of just one.
Yeah, I think that I don't even understand why they do them all in the same week. I think that this is the first step towards Apple breaking these up into multiple. This is still like a lot of energy to all be spent on these computers. I guess they're all connected, so maybe it makes sense. But I think that like once you let the M4 bag out, I guess you want to kind of, for the computers, maybe you want to announce them all at the same time. But I think they could have done it's not like they're doing new things with the iMac. They recorded this video a month or 2 or 3 ago, so it's not there's nothing new about this. They could have released the iMac 2 weeks ago, the Mac Mini last week, and the laptops this week, and they would have probably gotten just as much press or even more press because then they can focus on those. But I think one of the advantages of doing them all together would be, these little get-togethers they have with the influencers where they can show them, oh, these are the new computers and everything else. But I think that you're going to see Apple continue to stretch these announcements out and give them more individual attention. So I think it's brilliant. I think that they could go further, but I think that it's a good start towards. And I think I was about to say this is the beginning of the end of the keynote, but I think that the beginning of the end of the keynote was when Apple started recording them back in COVID. And I think that this is just a natural, continuation of the dissolution of the idea of a keynote release. I think they're going to find that they have the same amount of impact doing this kind of thing. They may still have an opportunity to get together 1 or 2 times a year, but I think anybody who thinks that Apple's getting back on a stage is sorely mistaken. I do think it's interesting. I don't think that one of the places that they're standing in exists at Apple Park. Like there's a weird shot, like that's a weird part of the Apple Park. I don't think that there's that curved thing that they're standing in. I think they just made that up. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I think it's a conspiracy. I heard a conspiracy theory on the net that they stretch things out to make sure that nobody wrote a lot of articles about the fact that they put the charging port on the bottom of the new Magic Mouse in the same horrible place it was before underneath it, so that you had to take your mouse out of service to recharge it. I'm sticking with that story. I think it's all a huge, vast conspiracy. I don't care. Like, I guess I think that I saw a bunch of people talking about it. Like, what are they complaining about? Like, I don't understand. It's like with your Magic Mouse, like you literally plug it in and you go have lunch and you come back and then don't have to think about it for 2 months. Like I was like, wow, people are really, and no, it's the biggest problem in the history of the world.
Oh my gosh. I mean, people acted like, I was going to say something horrible, but people act like it's just the most horrible thing that ever happened in the world. That someone, that Apple put a charger on the bottom of a mouse, and I'm like, I haven't remembered when that was even an issue. Like usually, what happens is that I have a Magic Mouse. I don't use it that often, but I have it for some things that I pop it out for. But I will admit that when I was using it all the time, I would just like, I'm walking away, and I had literally a little lightning sitting right next to it, and I would just plug it in as I walked away, about once a week, and just never thought. I mean, it just never occurred to me that I would have it out of commission for any period of time. I didn't even think that I was like, when did that happen? I was like, that might have happened like 3 or 4 years ago. That's why the lightning cable is right next to where the Magic Mouse sits. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, you got to remember that Johnny I was in charge of the design department at that point, and he hates holes in things. That's why there are no ports on anything, and he didn't want to see a visible port on that mouse, so they moved it to the bottom. Since, as Alex said, you probably only need to charge it once every month or
2
so.
months. 2 months, maybe 2 months.
So he moved it to the bottom, the most impractical place to put it. But hey, it looks cooler.
No, the impractical place is on the back of the first Apple Pencil, where you have to plug it in and leave it hanging out the space.
But after all that, I have this, and all I do is I pull it out and I put another battery in, and I go for another 6 months. Like it's so it's a different.
Yeah,
like that's become much more convenient. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Free training PSA, Fairlight immersive audio tools in DaVinci Resolve, including creating and mixing ambisonics, Dolby Atmos, and MPEG-H projects. He's got a Zoom link there to maybe an announcement about it.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, that's right. Apparently, there's going to be a webinar this afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up. It's October 29th. That is today, isn't it? Yes. So this afternoon at 3 o'clock Pacific time, they're going to conduct a webinar on this immersive type mixing on Fairlight. So if you're interested, go to that link that he put there in Zoom in this question and sign up. You have to register for that to attend. I don't think there's any charge to it.
No, there's no charge. And I will say this is, every company should do what Blackmagic does with training. I think this will probably be Mary Plumer, who is fantastic at what she does with Fairlight, and she is these Resolve, especially the Fairlight ones, but the Resolve training in general from Blackmagic is really good. Really, really. If you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get my feet on the ground or get on the rails or whatever, these are great. And the fact that they're free is kind of amazing. So definitely check it out if you have the time. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. He says, do you think the waitlist requirement for the initial setup process will turn novice users away from Apple Intelligence as compared with other Gen AI assistance platforms?
Yeah, go, Jason.
No, I don't think so. Not a chance. For those who don't know what he's talking about, and I was part of the beta, so mine went right in. But there was when you turn on Apple Intelligence, there's a place where you have to join and then get onboarded, and it says, your subscription is pending, and I was right in for beta, so I cannot imagine that they're worried about it being outstripped. And yeah, I can't tell you how long it's lasting right now because I did it months ago.
Yeah, I don't. I can see that a bunch of Apple users are all going to say, "Well, I'm going to have to go to Android because I was on a wait list for for Apple Intelligence." I just don't. This is the big advantage that Apple has, is that Apple users aren't going anywhere, and so they don't. There's not nearly the rush, and we have lots of AI tools that are already available to us. The reason the other AI tools have to play harder is because they're all competing with each other. Apple's not really competing with anyone, so they're adding all of these things and they're slowly rolling them out. We're not going to see the features that we saw announced in June until next June. They'll finish them all in May, so they don't have to talk about them again. And then they'll have a new set of them that they're putting out, and they're going to slow roll this whole thing out over years, 3 to 5 years. And it's not going to matter because we're already using ChatGPT on our phone. We're already using all these other things on our computers and our phones. It's not like we feel, it'll just be that some of these things are now easier to do on our computer. So I don't think that there's any real rush. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think the reason they're doing this is because AI takes a huge amount of processing power, and they're promising this tiered approach to Apple Intelligence. Whether it's first it happens on your device, and then it happens on within the Apple servers and their AI processing that's secure, and then it goes to the outside world, to the OpenAI and the other models that are out in the real world. And what they don't want to have is have it all released on a single date where every single Apple user that, of course, they always have to have the latest hardware. So they're all going to have the latest hardware when it's out. They're going to be slamming that AI to test it, and they're going to get a really slow response when everybody's trying to hit those Apple servers at the same time, and they can't handle all of that influx at a single point in time. And people are going to be disappointed with the wait times, and then they're going to poo-poo it, and they're going to write bad reviews about it. So it's much better to roll it out gradually and not slam the servers with a whole bunch of traffic at one time and make the experience bad for everybody, which tends to give them a bad reputation at the beginning, even if there's no justification of that, simply because of the increased traffic at a single point in time. Microsoft has had this problem with rolling out new versions of Windows. They let it slide out a little bit at a time. They slide it out across the country. It's not 24H2 is now available, but you can go and get it if you want to, but they roll it out one small area at a time and one different group of machines at a time in order to not hang up their update servers to make the wait times and the install times much longer. So it's similar idea.
Yeah, and again, I think that it would be an unforced error on Apple to try to push too hard because they just don't need to, and that people are going to be happy with what they show up with. These are kind of cute things to be adding to it. I think they pick some of the low hanging fruit, which is the text, being able to have some of the text tools, and I think that we expect by the end of the year to see the new whatever Genmojis or whatever, where you're going to be able to have little things, and pictures and all of those things. And so I think that there's they're going to put out the things that are cute first, and then keep rolling things out. But I think that people should not underestimate it. Because they're not in a rush. They're taking on the way that you probably should really do AI, and no one else has the full vertical stack or the time to do what Apple's doing, which is that they're going to distribute, by building all the hardware, they're distributing the load away from them. And then they're building a seamless connection between that load being sitting on the far end on the computers and so all that, all those server farms, they're still going to have to build lots of server farms, but less of them because everyone's using their computers and their iPads and their phones. And so they're going to be able to, they're going to distribute that load among Apple users. And then they're going to have the cloud, which is still very private, and they're letting people start to bang on it. They're putting out, some rewards if you can find your way through it. So they're really, so they'll have this cloud that's largely private and contained. And then they're just using the other services as release valves. Now, most importantly, instead of making everybody figure out how to make this work, they're handing this all back to the developers as you can just write to this and ask for it. Instead of having to figure out AI, every Apple developer gets to just go, well, then have the AI do this thing. Like, this is just going to be a call for an app developer on the Apple platform. You don't have to figure out how to make this work. You just make a call to it, and it's going to work across all the machines. That is super powerful, and so I think that that's going to be something that's going to be really hard to compete with as they keep on going. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm taken back to that. I mentioned this on the show before, but 2 years ago when I was at Comic-Con taking photos, I was coming back and somebody else was driving the car, so I was paging through the shots that I had taken. And for some reason, I held on too long to a particular character, and that kind of glowing outline formed around it. And I had no idea what was going on. And to me, that was just the phone was processing the content on the phone locally because I was in a car driving along, and it happened literally instantaneously, essentially with a touch. So it didn't feel like it was talking to any other service. It just did that processing and did the mat for that thing and allowed me to separate one part of it from another in real time. And that was the first time I got the feeling that Apple was rolling out a lot of kind of behind the scenes processing in a way that I had never seen or felt before that was so seamless. I mean, it really freaked me out. And it turned out to be very useful because I did mats of a lot of the characters that I had shot photos of in the car driving along. They didn't even train me. I mean, I never knew the function was there. I just fell into it, used it, got the results I wanted, and went on, and I didn't forget about it. I kept using it from that point on. But I think that's kind of the way they see some of this new AI feature stuff happening. Let's integrate it so well that we don't really have to do a ton of training to make it pretty simple, to make it on device, to make it part of the experience of using their devices so that they don't have to have that big load of, let me now tell you how to use this new thing, and let me tell you how to build prompts, and let me, spend a lot of time coming up to speed on it. It was like almost instantly. And that really is probably the single most impressive thing to me about being in the Apple ecosystem in the last few years was how easy they made that for me to learn and use.
Your questions and your votes matter, so make sure to go to Mukana and ask those questions and vote those questions up or down based on what you think we should be talking about. If you don't know where to find Mukana, you can go to officehours.global/join and sign up. You'll start getting emails. You'll get links to where to go to Discord and how to get into Mukana. Let's go to the next question.
Next one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. For making your own avatar for production, what do you use? Probably not this. X-Me AI Avatar Generator. Lifetime subscription is $89.99, regular to $360. Worth it? And he's got a link there to PopSci's article about it.
Courtney.
No, you can do this yourself with a little handiwork. You can go to 11 Labs and clone your voice, and there's a service or a thing called Emo. It's very similar to the VISCA one, which we have shown here many times, which is Microsoft's still image to animated image with voice, using voice or text to voice that will animate any still of you. You just have to load a single still of yourself into this Emo, and then feed it an audio file or a text file, and it will animate your lips perfectly and your face realistically, including head movements and chest movements and breaths. You see the person take a breath every time there's a breath in the script. And so you can do this yourself and create this yourself. I don't know if I'd pay $89 to do this. That's basically what they're doing. They're using those two tools probably to generate this avatar, realistic avatar of yourself. I mean, it could save a lot of money if it could, if once you build the avatar, you could just change the wardrobe on it using AI. It'll save you a lot of money. You won't have to buy as many clothes. If you host a lot of, if you're on camera a lot in a lot of videos on YouTube, you can have it get you a whole new wardrobe and not have to spend a dime.
I don't even like virtual backgrounds. so I don't think this is gonna, this does not make me feel any better. I think digital avatar is a horrible idea. Like I just think it's going to be soul sucking to see lots of people using these. And I do think that there's going to be a huge backlash over digital avatars and bots and lots of other things that are being added to these systems. And people are going to want to look for platforms that make you prove that you're human every time you interact with them. It'll be kind of like we don't serve that kind here. Star Wars reference, gratuitous Star Wars reference inserted there. So, but I think that you're going to see a big backlash because it's really not going to fulfill what our lower brain needs, which is that interconnection between other people. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Why do you think Apple made the iMac their first announcement instead of the MacBook Pro or Mac Mini?
Good, Jason.
Because this is the one that is least interesting. I mean, they upgraded the camera, they upgraded the processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and a matte display, and that's it. Oh, yeah, and bubblegum pink.
Right. And we expect to see the Mac Mini today. Now, I think there was a question about, hey, there's no announcement today. I think yesterday was about 8 o'clock. Was it 8 o'clock or maybe a little after 8 that we saw the announcement roll out? Amazon, it appears, accidentally posted the stats for the Mac Mini this morning. I think that maybe they got the time off by a little bit. So maybe EST versus PST or something like that. So we think that the Mac Mini is coming out. We do think that it's going to be pretty powerful, and we think that it's going to be smaller. And we're pretty sure of it now because we saw the comparison chart from Amazon. so we expect to see it probably right after the show. Go ahead, Bill.
Technically, the M4 iPad was the first one of this series. Now, I know it's a different kind of class, but to me, I think they were getting yields up, getting the production lines going. It's easier probably for them to work on a specific thing like the iPad and then extend it out across the line. I think the Mac Mini was the easiest engineering thing, and then all of a sudden, next we can expect it in the bigger. The MacBook Pro is probably, I don't know specific stats, but their best-selling unit. So I think that having 2 or 3 iterations of getting the manufacturing process truly dialed in, so they can create as many MacBook Pros or MacBooks of some sort as possible, is a wise thing. So I would expect them to come out pretty quickly here.
Go, Courtney.
Yeah, I think the iMac was the first, probably because it's the one product you don't have to connect a lot of stuff to. And this new series of processors, the M4, does allow you to add an additional monitor. Everyone, a cheer goes up from the crowd. Other than just 2 monitors, you now can have 3, I believe, if not more, maybe 4. There's a rumor about that. But yeah, because they have to, they killed the 8 gigabyte entry level version. So the 16 gigabytes is the bottom of the end of the SKUs for the new M4s. And since that RAM is shared by the GPU and the CPU and the NPU and all the other U's, it's going to, the amount of RAM that it comes with is crucial. So now they will have up to 64 gigabytes of RAM available on that chip as opposed to topping out at 32. So that'll allow you additional screens to plug in because you got more screen RAM available to your onboard GPU. So I think the reason that since you're not going to be usually maybe some people are plugging in external screens to their iMac, but I think iMacs are used mostly in educational and business situations where they're on somebody's desk as a receptionist or a CEO or, people in business who aren't going to be hooking up multiple monitors. Those power users that need multiple monitors, like creators and editors and people like that, are going to want to plug a bunch of stuff into it. And the iMac is the least likely to fill that niche. So that's why they released it first, because you don't have to deal with a lot of compatibility of plugging external things in. It just has 4 Thunderbolt ports on it, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's 2 monitors up to 6K at 60 frames a second, or 1 monitor that's 8K 120. I think we should keep watching the 8K 120 and definitely the 120 frame per second picture, because it's really interesting that Apple's slowly building all of their devices able to support 120, which at some point means that you could be shooting stuff on your phone, delivering to friends, and then watching it at 120. And I can tell you from a lot of experience that beyond slow motion, 120 on screens that can support 120 is a different experience. Like, it'll look like you're looking at a window through something. And I think that if they keep on, supporting these things, they may be building that pipeline for that. So we'll have to see. But I do agree. This was the iMac was the least interesting. The Mac Mini is the next interesting, and the Mac Pros are the big money maker. The MacBook Pros are the big money maker for Apple. That's what they sell the most of. And so we'll probably see boom, boom, boom. My guess is it won't be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And the reason is because their quarterlies are on Thursday. So Apple's releasing 1, 2, 3, and then they're going to talk about the quarterlies on Thursday. So I think that's most likely the tick-tock of this process. Next question.
Oliver Breidenbach, our friend from Minimo Live headquarters. What do you think of Apple's new TV series style keynote format as opposed to the usual feature-length presentations?
Go, Jason.
I thought it was great to not have the hyperbole quilt about Apple TV Plus and, all the things that had to happen before the thing. I think it was clearly shot separately and segmented in a way that it was designed so that it didn't matter how they rolled it out. This transition continues to bug me. I'm going to play this at half speed. This body looks fake. This looks animated. He looks like a puppet, and I can't explain quite why. It's probably just the face that they just left as solid for too long. But it was nice to watch 11 minutes instead of 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the keying was suspect. I will say that I think most of these were digital sets. I think Apple's kind of moved to green screen for most of these, and I felt like it was somewhere between smooth and not working. There was some white halos around that one specifically, and it's interesting that I feel like it was composited. I mean, because there's this little white edge on him, very, very subtle, but you could see it there, and that's usually indicative of sharpening. so sharpening on a green screen. But what was interesting about it was you did see, the trees in the background flowing back and forth and so on and so forth. So how they exactly stack that together would be interesting. It'd be probably something they're never going to show us. But I do think that it was interesting. I think as far as a format goes, this is the future. This is going to give Apple so much more. Typically what's happened is if you look at the whole year, Apple has, in usually March and April, they have iPads, and sometimes other things like that. And then they have June. They have June is probably more closer to here. They have the Pro lines typically, and then in September they have the phone, and oftentimes the watch, and sometimes the Apple TV. And then they have CPUs here, right? So this has been the traditional layout. I think what we're moving to is being able to do lots of little ones, or we'll take them up here like this almost every month. If this works, I think that's where we're going. And those can flex back and forth. But I think that Apple's probably got about 12 products they'd want to talk about, especially if they started talking about home or other things. They can gin up the marketing team to only have to worry about one thing at a time. The teams have a little bit of flexibility of they're not all trying to get grouped together, because a lot of times I think you're holding up announcements on one product because the other product isn't ready to announce, or other things like that. And so I think that this is going to be really flexible, and I think Apple's going to, as Apple led the way for keynotes to be the way they are, I think they're going to lead the way for keynotes to devolve into these video production. Remember, when we did the keynotes originally, we needed press. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have big, high quality video. We didn't have all those things. And so we have to realize how many of these things are past-based conversations, not current or future-based conversations. And I think that this is a future-based conversation. Go ahead, Bill.
Jason, I just wanted to say, if there's a folk band in your area, you really should contact them and offer them Hyperbole Quilt as a name. That is a
sounds like a build of
turn of phrase. Just saying.
Oh, man. All right, next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach. Is there a way to programmatically activate a Stream Deck multi-action as part of a broader automation on macOS?
Go ahead, Jason.
This is a really neat question, because every time you've done this in the past, it's going from the Stream Deck down, and this is how to do it up. Great question. And any time I programmatically don't know how to do something, I asked ChatGPT, and what it said was, you can absolutely, if you're familiar with the Stream Deck SDK, write a plugin that will allow you to do this. And I'm like, or I could just open a new tab and ask it to write me a plugin that did exactly that. And looks like it did. So there you have it.
That's one way to do it. I think that you may be able to find functionality within Companion or Central Control that could go back up to that direction as well. So take a look at those two as options as well.
Keyboard Maestro can also do this, by the way, in AppleScript.
Okay. Next question.
David Brady in New York City. Up next, I have disabled separate spaces while at work, and now there are certain apps, I'm looking at you, Insta360 Control, that won't run on the extended screen. I drag it there, and it snaps back to the main screen. Why?
So you're probably set to displays have separate spaces. So that may be why that's happening, is that it thinks that it's going into another space, I think. It gets confusing. Now, I do have mine set to separate spaces. I don't have that problem, and I don't have my spaces. I think I have my spaces turned off. So I think that it has to do with something around how your monitors are set as to whether they're separate or unified spaces, and then whether you have spaces. And I think that the combination of those two is causing that problem. I'm not 100% sure. I have not had this problem. My monitors are set up to, and I may have spaces turned on, my monitors are set up to each one's a separate space. And the reason I do that is so that if I drag a monitor if I drag a window half over, so for instance, the way that panelist view works. Is there's a middle column I want, but I really want it over on the side. So I just put it over on the side, but it doesn't leak over to the other window. It just lives inside the space that it's in. So that's how I have mine set up there. But you might want to try spaces on or turn off the monitors or separate spaces and see if that works. Next question.
Omar Gadam in Orange County, California wonders, has anyone tested VISCA over IP control with the ATEM software control's latest release, 9.6.2? Does it work with the advanced panel or the older broadcast panel for pan-tilt-zoom control?
Oh, man.
I can't imagine it wouldn't, but I haven't tried it.
VISCA's pretty simple, pretty old. Been around for a long, long time.
Yeah. I haven't heard that word.
Well, the difference here is VISCA
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
It normally goes over 422 serial port. But now they're switching it to going over IP over the internet, over the Ethernet port, I guess.
Be funny if you had to have an Apple Talk translator
to terminate at the end of the chain.
Yeah. That's going back a ways.
I feel like that little joystick that they put on all of those advanced panels that just didn't go to anywhere, or you barely ever used. I mean, you could use it to move things around for the super sources, but that's about it. It'd be fun to have it, actually. It was always supposed to be something that you can control PTZs with. It just never actually happened. So interesting. It should work. Let us know how that works for you. Again, I haven't used VISCA for a long time. Most of our PTZ cameras now are using some version of IP protocol. So and so we're talking to them in a different way. We're just not using VISCA as much anymore to do that control. Go ahead, Bill.
I think we ought to have a dongle contest at some point. Find the oldest protocol you can and see how many translators you have to have. We're going to plug this into the RS-422, this into that, and see if you can get it into a modern computer by using
to serial to SCSI.
Yeah, 7 or 8 adapters in between. And that'll be the dongle Olympics.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I'd win that contest because the foot pedal control on my playback software uses clear to send and ring detect off of RS-232 modem over a COM port. So
I wouldn't bet against you, Courtney.
That's how these remote foot pedals do control for transcription. They use it. They're using because that interrupt, that ring detect interrupts everything else. It doesn't have to have focus to interrupt, and so that you can use a foot pedal with any software on your computer. And that interrupt will be processed whenever they press that pedal, regardless of what has focus. That's why I use it.
I think when I was trying to use my DVCam VC20 deck into the current Mac Pro USB-C or Thunderbolt in, I think I had 3 dongles and a cable converter in between them. But darned if it didn't work. So I was able to capture something off of an old tape.
This is USB to 232.
Go, look at that. 232.
Love it.
And that's what my software
you can be programming
that specific
TI calculator
in order to work because it has a 9-pin connector on it.
Yeah. D sub 9.
If you want to ask a question and you don't know how to get it to Makana, it's okay. You can use ask. You can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global and ask the question there. Or you can use this little QR code. All right, next question.
Next question comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama City. I'm planning on transitioning from HDMI to SDI. Should I get a Blackmagic Design HDMI to SDI 12G bidirectional converter or stay on 3G? I got an ATEM Mini EXT ISO, but Sony PXW Z150. Future-proof or use what I need now?
Good, Jason.
Eduardo, absolutely get the 12 bidirectional. It's hard. Much easier.
Yeah. So I'm in the same boat. So the only thing I'll say is that I have to convert. I'm converting back to SDI. I've taken HDMI as far as it can go in my office. Like I just can't keep doing this, and so I'm in the same boat here. But I have to buy like 12 of them to get the converters to and from, and the difference in cost between the it's over twice as expensive to buy the 12G as it is the 3G we're not talking about $10 here. I mean, we're talking about me spending an extra $1,000 to have 12G bidirectional converters into a switcher that doesn't support that, and so and into monitors that are mostly. I mean, I run a 1080p monitor system because of this. Because of the whole thing. I just don't have 4K monitors. I'm going to have one that comes out of one of my computers that's going to be my high res monitor, but I don't. You just have to decide how many you're buying. If you're buying 3 or 4, I'd probably get the 12Gs. If you're buying more than that, I'd probably think about the 3Gs. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever want to transition to 4K cameras or a switcher, you're going to need the 12 gigabit. Because you can't do it over 3 gigabit. I don't think.
Wait, say that again.
Well, I don't think 3 gigabit will handle 4K.
No, it won't. But I just don't work at home. I don't work in that. You just have to decide whether you're.
As long as you're working 1080p, it's fine. But if you,
he's working in 1080p right now. Yeah. I mean, he's got an ATEM Mini, so it's and so the question is do you really think you're going to go to 4K? And what what is your client? I mean, I think that as someone who got into 4K before everybody else, I got into 4K in 2016 with Blackmagic stuff using that, like just crazy. Buying everything that was 4K and had 4K capability, did some of the very first 4K streams, I think in 2016 or 2017 to YouTube. Like as soon as YouTube Live did 4K, we were doing it, and I will say that I have done maybe 6 gigs in 4K that I got paid for. I mean, like I do 4K, we look at it, but we found that things like higher frame rate, better color depth, better audio, all made a bigger move the bar a lot further than 4K because a vast majority of our consumers couldn't see it, and even when they couldn't tell the difference. And so I would just be careful of worrying about it, especially if you're trying to, again, if money is a scarce resource, I would think about just sticking with 1080p for a while longer if you're making the money to go to 4K. And again, as I built entire 4K systems, we just didn't get much use out of them. I mean, most of our clients just didn't know what to do with that. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
All right. Does Blackmagic make a 3G that has no dongles that will auto adapt? I don't remember. If they do, then more power to you. My real fear here is that again, in the field, something is different with the camera. You've got to change from a drop frame to a steady frame rate, and all of a sudden,
they have
you're there with a paper clip.
But they have if you're talking about bidirectionals, the bidirectional 3G and the bidirectional 12G are pretty much the same, except that one's 12G and one's 3G.
All right,
so
fair.
So I think that you're just paying a lot more because it's harder to do. So in that little box, and so next question.
Håkan Fors in Stockholm, Sweden's up next. What platforms, for example, vMix scripting, Bitfocus Companion, Python scripts, do you usually use for show automation, and why that platform?
I think that this, it depends. It depends really on what people are doing. I think that a lot of folks here are using Companion to do a lot of these. Bitfocus Companion and Central Control are two very popular ones. We run this show automating with Universe, but where it's a mixture of Universe and Isadora do a lot of the automation that does. A lot of people that are doing VJ and a lot of spherical work are using Touch Designer. So those are things to kind of look at. A lot in Europe, a lot of the kiosks, projection mapping, and controls are using Ventus to do a lot of those things. So it really depends on where you are and what you're trying to achieve. But I think that every there's so many options that you really have to play with some of them and talk to folks and figure out which one is the best one for not only for your use case, but for your head. For instance, the way Companion works, I can do a couple things in Companion, but it does not work the way my mind works. I need nodes, so I need little blocks and that's how I think. And so I lean towards things. If I see a nodal infrastructure to do the programming, I tend to lean towards those things and not necessarily in kind of even shortcuts that Apple puts out is definitely not the way I think. And so I find it to be, I've built a bunch of shortcuts, but I find it to be relatively painful compared to, a nodal structure. Next question.
Håkan's right back from Stockholm with what are your thoughts on the updated NDI free audio tool in NDI 6.1? And he's got a link there.
Go ahead, Jason.
My very first thought, I kid you not, is I wish loopback existed for Windows, like full stop. As far as I'm concerned, I really like that they're adding to the toolkit, and I like that it keeps becoming more verbose, and I wish they would play nice, as nicely on macOS as they do on Windows.
Good, Courtney.
Well, this is available on Windows and Linux. I think they're trying to just give you a virtual sound, a command line operated virtual sound card that you can put on just about anything and transmit audio over NDI over the network. So I think it's interesting. I have not used it or tried it, but I think they're trying to come up with a Dante alternative to set up sound networks with virtual cards in all computers and devices that are out there that run on Linux or Windows, or I think Mac as well, don't they?
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois, trying to wrap and organize audio and video cables. How can I easily identify cables as to length?
Go ahead, Bill.
There's all sorts of ways. I used to use colored rip ties, and the blue ones were all 25 feet. The orange ones were all 50 feet. And so that's one way. There are hundreds of other ways. So figure out what works for you.
Jason?
Yeah, you can always come up with your own code. And if you want to be a massive nerd, use resistor codes.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I have the colored rubber boots on the end of all the SDI cables, and I write with a Sharpie on there the length of the cable on each end. So I know when I grab the end of that cable, even if it's strung out somewhere, is that the 75-footer, is that a 50-footer, is that a 25-footer? Because it's all written in Sharpie on the ends. You have to refresh them every now and then because it rubs off after a while.
Yeah, so we've done a couple different things to do this. There's a couple to unpack this. I use color codes, but I don't use them for length. I usually use them so that I know what number I'm connecting to. So I do use the resistor code typically to do that. So a lot of my cables have color codes in them, so I know that I'm plugging camera 1 into camera 1 and camera 2 into camera 2. And I use those, and we're using the rear twist Neutrik connectors for SDIs specifically to do that. And you can also get colored, HDMIs, you can get colored audio cables, et cetera, boots for those. As far as lengths go, we use a label maker and shrink wrap and shrink. So basically, if you're building them, you before you put the connector on, you put the label on, and then you put shrink tubing on it, and you take a little heat gun and go, and it tells you it's 25 feet. Now, if you really want to get geeky about it, you don't put the 20. What we did with Pixel Core is that we had a logo right at the end, right next to the connector, and then we had another logo, or the length would be out a little bit further. Now, why did we put it out here instead of right next to it, right at the connector? Because if you roll it together and you set the two of them right together so that they're matching up, all the cable lengths will be the same. So all the 25s and all the 10s and all the 5s and all the 50s will all be exactly the same diameter. And the reason for that is that we would build the 50s at one diameter, the 25s dropped into the 50s, the 10s dropped into the 25s, and you could build a very dense, what we tended to refer to as a Widowmaker a case, because it was so much copper.
Heavy.
Like it was like you just pack it in there because there's no air. But it made it much easier, and it looks amazing on a wall. So if you have a bunch of stuff hanging and all of the things look exactly the same, but how you get there is you put that connector a little bit further down, and that's great. Next question.
Ranjan Shandil of Los Angeles, Raj says, any way to sync audio to video using the iPhone 15 or 16?
I don't know if you're trying to get audio in or you're actually trying to slip the audio. So typically what this question is referring to is the fact that often your audio is going to go faster than your video. And so your audio is going to get in there. Now, if both your audio and your video are coming into the phone directly, they shouldn't need a resync to do that unless something was delayed on the way through. But if you're trying to sync it in real time, you really need something on the audio end to basically delay audio. If you're trying to measure sync and do it in the edit, you're trying to sync it there. As Mickey said, we would typically do slates, to do a slate. Slates are really great because when you close a slate, you've got an audio pulse, an impulse, and you've got the video of that impulse. And so usually that's going to give you a really good sense of where the sync is to make that actually work. So I think that, a slate works well. Oftentimes, if we have multiple ones, we would do this. We had this little thing called what we call a mini slate. When you're dealing with talent, like in an environment, we get all the cameras to look at the person, and they go like this, and you all had to see the finger. But we call it, give me a mini slate, and they thought it was really funny. But they would do this thing and just let us sync all the cameras. So as long as they all saw it, it was a good little way of, if we're all handheld and we're all at a location and we're not going to pull out a slate because it looks weird in that environment. It was good for covering events. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith, Chautauqua, New York. Can an ATEM Mini Pro ISO connect to a Zoom meeting by itself, or do I need to have it act as a webcam and audio source to a laptop that is hosting the Zoom meeting?
Yeah, you need that. So you're going to need it's going to show up as a webcam and as an audio source. You can make it the audio source or something else the audio source. If you make it the audio source, typically your sync is better. So that typically will work. Yeah, that would be, but you can't have it. It can't connect directly to the Zoom source. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael up next. Would there be any way to use an M series iMac as a secondary monitor for a separate Mac when one wishes to upgrade?
Go, Jason.
Okay, the short answer is no. The longer answer is yes, there are ways, and you're not going to like any of them. There are apps. Luna Display is $120 and requires a dongle. Duet Display, Open Core Legacy Patcher, which is only for Intel iMacs, I guess. Or you could use AirPlay. None of that is going to be seamless, and none of it is going to be smooth. And the only viable one is not inexpensive, but I guess it does work.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What can you do with the hybrid semi-modular synthesis producer in a multi-engine digital oscillator, a classic analog ladder filter, and 24-digit oscillators? And he's got a link there to a YouTube video for it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
You can keep yourself confused for hours on how to generate sounds with that thing. It's a interesting little synthesizer that uses digital oscillators, and it uses digital models of waveform in that oscillator. And then the rest of it is kind of like very similar to your typical analog synth, where you have a voltage-controlled filter, voltage-controlled envelope generator, sequencer. I think it is monotonic, but it does have a MIDI interface, so maybe it's polyphonic. But the difference in this one is that it allows you to model waveforms in the digital model waveforms in the oscillator itself. So rather than just choosing the Fab 4, the square wave, the triangle wave, the sawtooth wave, and the pulse, it lets you choose variety of wave shapes, sine wave.
Yeah, and I think this was a upgrade from the WASP, which is something that they had before. So it's adding the digital to the WASP. One thing I will say about Behringer is their ability to do these videos. Look, if you look at this, is a video that they built, and they've got this nice little outlines, and they're explaining what each section does. It's worth watching the video whether you're going to get this or not, just based on how they're kind of explaining. If you scan through it. Look, this is the way companies should build. This is how our product works. So I don't know if I'll ever use this product, but I will watch it carefully to look at how they're building out this. I mean, it could be done better. But I will say this is way better than most other companies show how those work. And this is the official Behringer video, and they've been doing relatively good videos for a long time, and I think they get it, when it comes to that. So I think that it's a really good example of them kind of thinking through that. Next question.
Jess Simmons in St. Louis, Missouri. I work with Panasonic pan-tilt zooms and an Ursa Mini, and color matching seems impossible, although we're just white-black balancing, can't afford chip cards. I have a lot of questions about this, but don't have any room to type them. He uses the classic LOL for laughing and says, but any tips?
Yeah, you need a chip card. You need a color chip. And again, X-Rite makes some that are video color chips, and there's a variety of different color chips that you can get. But you need one. Like, you cannot match cameras without a color chart. It doesn't work because you can't tell what's going on. And so you can sometimes get closer if you just have a person sitting up there and get the skin tones right. But it's never going to be quite right. You want to do both of those things, by the way, skin tones and that person. So those are the things that you want to think about there. But yeah, you need a color chart to make that actually work. Do that. The other thing to think about is whether the Panasonics you can run a Panasonic through some kind of converter, a Blackmagic converter. And by the way, for the back end team, I'm going to go a little over because we're going to see if Apple is going to run an announcement for us. So don't go to black. Don't take me to black. So anyway, I just had to see if I was going to go to black or not. So anyway, what you can do is run these PTZs. So the thing you have to do is, number one, is you can't color correct the PTZs to the URSA, but you can color correct the URSA to the PTZs. As far as getting a cheap one, I mean, these color charts aren't that expensive. I mean, you can get one for $150. I mean, I know that's not nothing. You can technically print something out if you've got a really good printer and just use it to match them, but it's not going to be the same. But it could theoretically get you closer to making that work. What white balance and black balance. We had a show the other day where someone said, "Hey, let's do a white balance," and I was like, "No." These cameras are as close as they're going to get for the show because they're all the same cameras, they're all the same setups, they're almost all the same lenses. Anything you do right now with the cameras in place are going to make them worse, not better. So be very careful of white balancing. It's a knee-jerk thing that people want to do, but it very rarely solves the problem. So you can match. It's easier to match the URSA to the PTZs because you have more controls. The PTZs, the Panasonic PTZs, are generally pretty crude as far as like the kind of controls you have over their color. And so you're going to get them to what you like, and then you're going to match the URSA to the URSA Mini to those. But what you can also do is put a converter box in between, a Blackmagic converter box. Just make sure it supports LUTs and do what I talked about earlier, which is shoot the color chart, build LUTs for each of the cameras, and then it just run through there and you can make that correction. So that'd be another way to do it. Again, these the matrix controls are. So here's the deal. So Jeff Simmons said the PTZs have crazy matrix controls. These are probably, I think that they're like the R minus G and G minus R and R minus B and B minus R and B minus G. And what those are designed to work with is a Dumont chart. It is a Chroma Dumont chart from DSC Labs. Without that matrix doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't, it's just garblegook. But when you put a Dumont chart in front of that camera and you start using the R minus Gs and G minus Rs and all the other things, you'll see in a vector scope, you'll see exactly what you're doing. So with the right tools, those matrices are very powerful. Without those tools, they are random. So I think that you really need and what a Dumont chart looks like. And these are rare.
Am I seeing
now.
this right? Mac Minis.
Did I miss it? I was just
refreshing.
There's the
Mac
we'll get to that in a second. So this is the Chroma Dumont chart, and this is rare now. I think they're going out of business, or they're closing up because they're retiring. I don't know if someone's going to buy it, but anyway. So what happens is these colors here that you see, they actually draw a line in the vector scope between all the holes in the vector scope. And so you can actually, just correct your camera and you'll see a perfect little thing that goes through it. That's why they're those colors, and so that's the big advantage, of those. But that chart is like $800. I don't know if they're going to make it anymore. So, but the X-Rite ones are a lot less expensive. So, anyway, so those are some things to think about. It's really an important subject, and we probably should spend more time on it. And now we did wait because we thought we're learning. We're learning like little Pavlov's dogs. Okay,
we're being trained.
Yesterday we learned that at 8 o'clock Apple will release a video. So now we know to wait until 8 o'clock to see what happened. And so so this is the new announcement. This is the new Mac Mini. So Jason, why don't you do you want to show us what we got here?
Yeah, so here it is, and I'm reading it as quickly as I can see it. So it looks like they've got the M4 and the M4 Pro. They've got 3 different setups, and I am most interested, selfishly, at the very highest end to see just what the back of this thing ends up looking like. Let's see.
It's interesting. I don't know if it's funny on their front.
3 in the
Apple's,
back, 3 in the back, 2 in the front. All right.
What's funny is it says
and it has HDMI and a built-in power supply. That's how the two come.
Now in the they didn't quite get this all right. Is Apple says Apple Intelligence is here, and they have Mac Mini, and then they say when you click Learn More, you get to go to the old Mac Mini. so
DNS
this is so quick.
Fun.
Yeah. Like let's see if I hit refresh, if I get
64 gigs of RAM in a thing the size of your fist.
Yeah, it's
there you go.
So this is let's see if I hit pre-order, if it lets. Oh, but if you hit pre-order, you get to it. So if you hit Learn More, you get to the old Mac Mini. But if you hit pre-order, you get to the new Mac Mini.
I'm halfway there.
Prices haven't changed on the Mac Mini. Some of us thought that they might. But it does look like all of them have gigabit Ethernet. All of them have 3. But $600 for this. This is a very by itself. Pretty powerful machine. This little Mac Mini here. It's hard to see in context to, and then you have let's see here. These are
Is the storage
Pros.
expandable? Not the memory, but the storage.
No, you have to decide how much you want. And what I will say is that
up to how many terabytes?
8 terabytes.
8 terabytes. We've got 10 gigabit Ethernet. That's big.
Yeah. So like this Mac Mini here. Let's see. We'll view the gallery here. This is so you've got your HDMI out. So you don't need to use up one of those. You've got your Ethernet and power. So it's pretty much like that. It got rid of the USB-A. No one uses it anymore anyway. I mean, I have to find USB-As now. And
all the docks have them. So if you're going to plug a dock into any one of those,
except for everyone with a memory with a thumb drive who wants to give you something.
Yeah, but
again, those low WC docks all have USB-As.
And so this is the high end version of it. And let's see. We'll continue here. We'll say. Display? No.
So the big choice is M4 or M4 Pro.
Yeah, where's okay, there's a bunch of, that's interesting. It didn't give me any, did I hit the wrong button? Hold on. So, okay, hit M4 processor. We'll get it we'll just load it up and see what happens. 64, it's going to be funny. 8
terabytes.
All right. So now we have a Mac Mini that costs
$4,000?
$4,700 for a Mac Mini. Yeah. So anyway, if you want to turn it all the way up, you can still spend, just in case you're wondering, you can still spend a lot of money. That's more than I spent on my Mac Studio, and it's a Mac Mini. You wonder whether they're going to release a Mac Studio after this, or how powerful the Mac Studio will be. But this is but this would be a very, very powerful computer. One of the reasons that you might want to think about that 8 terabytes, by the way, is so much money.
Did I see that? A 12-core CPU and an 18-core GPU?
Yeah, you can go up to
this
20.
One's 14 CPU, 20 GPU, 16-core neural engine.
Neural engine, I saw.
Wow. And this has got the Pro chip in it, right? And then it has, put a bunch of memory in it. And I would go at least 1 terabyte. But now, if you're going to do any video editing, I highly recommend the 8 terabyte. And the reason for that is that if you, at least on the Studio, we'd have to see it with the Mac Mini, but at least with the Studio, the throughput is 5 gigs a second.
Fast.
Really?
It's 5 gigs a second. And what?
On the Thunderbolt, is it 5 gigs?
No. The internal drive. The internal drive read-write is 5 gigs a second. and
like SATA 3.
It is crazy fast. There are things that I edit that I can only. This is what kills me on my Studio. I have projects that I can only edit on the internal drive because and I'm working on getting something else, an iodine, for the computer to do it otherwise. But it has been it's been truly painful because the throughput on the Thunderbolt has really been limited. So far, we haven't seen anything run faster than 2,200 gigs per second as far as a drive, other than the iodines. So anyway, so I think that so I think
2,200 gigabits, right?
This is Thunderbolt 5. I just figured that out.
No, I think it's gigabytes. It's gigabytes. Yeah, it's fast. Yeah, it's very fast. So
that must be that Infinity Fabric thing they were talking about, where the CPUs and GPUs are right next to. I mean,
well, everything's all unified there.
Bus.
So it's it's fast. So anyway, so this is a really, it's a beast. I think that this was for many of us was the thing that we were kind of waiting for to see what was going to happen. I'm probably going to try to. I'm probably not going to get the. I may have to buy. Oops, I went too far. I may have to buy many of these for a project, and so.
What
so
are
I'm
the dimensions on it?
Do
they list the dimensions anywhere?
If we could hit learn more and it actually
it would go to the right product.
Oh, here it is.
Still writing.
It fixed. Okay, there it was. Literally, we just got there so fast that we were unable to. So here's the. Let's see if it. And what were you? Oh, you're asking for the
dimension. So you drill down to specifications and see how big it is.
Because you don't know how big that woman's hand is.
Here it is. Well, there's a picture of it. There's a picture of it sitting there. So it really does look a lot like the newest Apple TV.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the size of it. And
it's bigger than this, though.
It is
$150. You can buy 4 of these for the price of the entry level Mac.
That was the cost. That was the sound of me just spending $2,000 on a Mac Mini.
I mean, it is. This is a lot of computer.
It's the size of a dock. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, the docks. The funny thing is, you'll set it on top of a dock to make it work. This is the footprint compared to the one that it had before.
One that had before was needlessly
large.
large.
Tech specs here. I just want to see if they list off.
Wonder if it's active.
And of course, it has
that much
all of these have
the
ProRes encode decode. All of them have video encode engines. Supported accelerated for H.264, HEVC, ProRes, RAW. They all have those. So that's all the Mac Minis are able to do that. There's a lot of horsepower here.
Function on the M4.
Does it do AV1 encode and decode?
Yep. It does decode.
Silicon.
Only decode.
I think it does encode too.
Decode, not encode.
No, it says what it says right now is it's got an AV1 decode is what's on the stats. I'm trying to look at where.
You're looking for physical dimensions. I'm trying to find.
No, I'm looking for what the how many monitors it can. Let's see here. I don't know.
I think I read a paper that said that can support 3.
Oh, here we go.
Edge display.
Oh my! Whoa! It. I'm confused and.
3 at 4K. I think.
Oh, this is the Mac Studio. I was like, what is it talking about?
Simultaneously supports up to 3 displays with up to 6K resolution at 60 hertz over Thunderbolt.
I was confused because I looked at the Mac Studio because it's listing all of them here. I didn't realize the Mac Studio M2 Max supports up to 8 4K displays, which I did not know that. So
Thunderbolt 5 has DisplayPort 2.1 over USB-C, which is pretty cool. It means you don't need Thunderbolt ports to drive a real monitor.
Yeah, so it's a lot of computer in a small package. It's not. They didn't lower the price, but they did pack as much as you can pack into that little computer. So
they do give you twice as much memory as the entry level, same price entry level was before.
Yeah.
You used to get 8 gigs for that price. Now you get 16 gigs for that price. So that's a bit of a jump.
And we have to admit the M4 jump from the M2 to M4 is going to be I don't know if they list off I'm sure
30%.
30% more. So
1.3% as fast as the
I'll have one November 8th.
No, the M3 or the M2?
M3.
No, but I think
There
it's,
was
I think
no
it's
M3
much
Mini.
higher. I know,
Well,
but what
there
I'm
was
saying
no
is
M3.
that
Yeah, no, but
compared to the
comparing
last
the M3
Mini,
before.
compared to the last
gonna
Mini,
be giant.
It's more.
Yeah,
significant.
it is a big. And if you compare it, and they always compare it to the Intels, it's like, well, that's a Core 2 Duo from 2015. They're comparing it to, so
Right.
it's a 6 times
No,
faster.
I really
than the-
like that
Yeah.
most of the time they're using the M1 as like kind of the baseline. At least that's fair.
Yeah.
Apple Insider says the neural engine on this is 3 times faster than the M1 equivalent. So they've been doing a lot of
Neural
work on
engine
the
is
silicon.
ridiculously fast on the M1. Like it's
Yeah, so this is 3 times ridiculously fast.
I was trying to figure out. It's interesting.
5 by
It does
5
this thing where it
inches.
does. If you have a Mac Mini Intel 2018, it is. I thought it was going to tell us here, but if you switch it to this, I think it. Oh, it says
The
up to
comparison.
2.2 faster, 2.2 times faster than the M1s.
That's what I said. They compare it to the
Oh,
not
Gigabit
the
Ethernet.
last model, but the model before last model.
Gigabit Ethernet on the back and the latter upgradable to 10 gig.
that's what I got.
So it doesn't come. Yeah,
Oh,
you have to
it
order
comes
that.
with 1 gig. How would you? Is it a software update?
No, I think when you buy it, you can upgrade it. One of those click buttons.
And Roscoe posted that it's 5 inches by 5 inches by 2 inches. So
it's about the size of a CD case by about 2 inches thick. Yeah, a stack of CDs.
yeah.
So
Little
only
bit,
2
maybe
inches.
just a
So we were
touch
wrong about
bigger.
it being
About the same height.
significantly taller.
I think it's about the same height as a. For some reason, I just saw that hand that Bill's showing right now, and I was thinking they should use football players. You know, like they have this one.
Make it
They have
look
this
really
one
small.
player for the Steelers who's 6'7". and he's
Shaquille
like a tight
O'Neal
end.
has a new job. Like
No, but he's got
Carl
the
Stroiken,
second largest hands ever, and he looks like he's throwing like a little football. Like he looks like he's like throwing this little toy football. He uses his hand for everything. So anyway, so we'll see. I'm probably going to get one for testing relatively soon, and we'll play with it from there. So, but it looks like a pretty powerful machine. So that's why we hung out for a little while. We think that we will see that again. We think we'll see those the next release tomorrow. So maybe we'll do the same thing again. So stay tuned for the MacBook Pro. Although this is the one that
All
we
the
really,
laptops tomorrow.
laptop should be tomorrow. That's what we expect. They didn't tell us that, but we expect it to be that way. So we'll go watch the movie now. Quick reminder, by the way, that you can go to officehours.global/shop and buy T-shirts. We got T-shirts. So go to officehours.global/shop, buy those T-shirts. Those help support keeping the lights on here. It does cost some money to run Office Hours. So if you buy the shirt, you're helping to support and power up Office Hours. So please buy early, buy often. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to get ready to close this one up. Thank you so much to all the great questions from everyone here. Those great questions kept the conversation moving here. We really appreciate everything that producers do from the conversation. Oftentimes answering the questions inside of the chat, inside of Makana, but also asking those questions. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible development team that makes this possible 7 days a week. We use multiple different platforms. We're using Vector and Ecamm and Mimo Live and hardware and Zoom Production Studio. And we're looking at new ones. And there's an incredible team that makes that possible. Thanks to the teams that do all the management that makes so we know what's actually going to happen. We really appreciate everybody's contribution. We traveled. If we had done this in person, we'd wandered around answering these questions. We would have traveled 51,000 miles, and that's 82,000 kilometers. And that is 405 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
At 2x5, the new Mac Mini is 0.3 by 0.6 bananas per scale.
There we go.
Half a banana.
I believe we've established that a standard banana is 8 inches, right?
I think it is. I think that's the
Sounds a little
imperial.
more than
It's the
imperial
metric
banana.
standard, yes.
Yeah, imperial banana is 8 inches.
It's the UT banana.
Yeah, exactly. What does that make it? Does it make it 20 centimeters? Something like that? Probably pretty close.
So, Jason, will you be getting your new Mac Minis next Friday? A week from Friday?
Yeah, I will. I'm not buying more than one. I mean,
Oh, you're just buying
cost
one.
$2,000, but I'm only going to buy one.
Isn't it amazing that?
But I want to buy a really nice one. Yeah, exactly.
It's only $600 until you get the one that you want.
10
pretty good.
gigabit Ethernet, and it weighs 1.5 pounds. No, I'm sorry, 1.